Early voting is expected to reach record levels, and absentee or mail-in ballots are the focus, as you've been hearing, of a lot of attention. A new analysis by the Pew Research Center finds more than 60% of the registered voters supporting President Trump say they have little or no confidence that those ballots will be counted as voters intended. We just heard that from Dan. Miles O'Brien has been looking into how mail-in ballots are secured, and tonight he looks at how that option compares with older voting machines.
It's early on Election Day in Memphis, Tennessee. And commissioners from each party are working in pairs to unlock sealed steel boxes filled with absentee ballots.
This one says Box 54 Rejects.
Benny Smith is a Democrat.
You have one central lock box that has a key for a Democrat, a key for a Republican, and nobody can get to the locks that unlocks the other locks unless you go through that chain.
In an August election like this, they would normally receive about 1,000 absentee ballots. But on this pandemic summer morning, they have 16,000 to process and tally. For Benny Smith, it's a COVID silver lining. He is a big proponent of hand-marked paper ballots as opposed to voting machines.
I'm a fierce paper advocate. It is an authenticatable result because you have the voter's intent. It's hand-eye coordination, and that's my selection process.
But for Shelby County's Administrator of Elections, Linda Phillips,
I state your name.
the absentee deluge is a headache. Tennessee law prevented her from opening the envelopes until this moment, and there were all kinds of surprises.
This is the first time many voters in Tennessee have ever voted a paper ballot, and they did some really weird things to them. We had a large number of ballots where they would select a candidate and then they'd write the name in again. But there was someone we couldn't figure out what they wanted. One guy voted for 14 people in a race for one.
That vote didn't count, but bipartisan teams labored to determine voter intent as best they could. The tea leaf reading occurred in Shelby County's election warehouse, where they store the voting machines they use in polling places.
I think machines help voters do a better job. It eliminates a lot of the mistakes that we see on paper ballots. And I prefer machines because they're just more accurate.
Maybe, but it's impossible to know that for sure. Here in Shelby County, they use vintage 2000 devices made by Diebold Election Systems, a company no longer in business. These so-called direct recording electronic machines, or DREs, are paperless, making it impossible to verify their accuracy. They and the networked machines that compile and tabulate the votes are an easy mark for hackers, which they have publicly proven time and again, most famously by the white hat hacker Harry Hursty in the 2014 HBO documentary Hacking Democracy. In a demonstration, Hursty had little trouble flipping votes.
What is it? 7 yes, 1 no. Oh my God.
In Memphis, efforts to buy new technology became mired in political debate and the pandemic. And yet few dispute the old machines are an Achilles heel.
Software and hardware ages in dog years mixed with jet fuel, right? A piece of technology 20 years ago, just like imagine a BlackBerry One or a flip phone or Sony Ericsson or something. If it's 20 years old, it's really outdated.
Benny Smith knows from experience. He's an information technology expert on computer security. The DRE machines came into vogue after punch card ballots created chaos in the 2000 Bush versus Gore election. By 2004, nearly 1 in 3 voters in the U.S. used DREs. But as the security vulnerabilities came to light, most jurisdictions got rid of them. In November, less than 10% of Americans will vote using DRE machines.
The trend lines are solidly in favor of a complete elimination of DREs.
Chris Krebs is director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at the Department of Homeland Security.
So we have a series of security controls that are in place that can harden those systems. But ultimately, when you think about the riskiest bits of election systems, election infrastructure, to exploit these kinds of machines at scale to change an election outcome, incredibly complicated.
But in New Hampshire, The Secretary of State has long believed the simple way to thwart hackers is to avoid using computers.
We became the first state in the country that actually had a law that said that every voter in New Hampshire shall vote on a paper ballot.
Bill Gardner has held the job for 44 years, longer than anyone currently in office in the nation. I followed him as he made the rounds on state primary day in September. He did not meet a stranger. It felt like I had stepped into a Norman Rockwell painting of 19th century town meeting halls.
When you became Secretary of State, were you a firm believer in the power and accuracy of paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots?
I was a believer. I'm a lot more of a believer after all these years. The more moving parts you have to the election process, the more problems you're going to have.
So you're old school and proud.
They have tried machines here before. In the late 19th century, every town got one of these. With a crank, gears, cylinders, and a bell, it counts ballots.
And you can see the counters? 0 to 9.
Right.
So it can get up to 999 ballots.
At that time, the concept of a secret ballot was relatively new in the United States.
Thank you.
Ever since, election officials have tried to preserve that secrecy while maintaining accuracy and security. But after all these years, there may not be a technological solution to that problem.
Technology is not always the answer, is it?
It's not been the answer with respect to elections, that's for sure. People have to have confidence. They have to have confidence that their vote counts. If you don't trust it, you're not going to make any effort to be a part of it. Not only that, but you're going to reject it.
In Memphis, Election Commissioner Benny Smith has similar worries. He says he cannot be certain whether votes captured on the old machines will truly count.
It's anybody's guess. Hopefully it's going to count. As a sitting commissioner, obviously, I'm going to advocate for every accountable measure to make sure that it did. But it's not a great product for you right now.
This election year, there has been a lot of political rhetoric that raises questions about the integrity of our elections.
This is going to be the scam of all time.
But the people who know best how we vote say paper ballots marked by hand, whether mailed in or filled out at a polling site, should be the least of our worries. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Miles O'Brien in Memphis, Tennessee.